Yeah.
Well,
Shit, it sounds.
Boom. Okay. So I've been talking to the mic and there was no audio. Hell yeah. Great way to start. But, anyways, what I was saying is welcome everybody. We're here with a couple of cool guys and girls, and we have basically. So this is what I've mentioned. I think 2 weeks ago, a week ago, that I want to try something casual, something interesting, something new. With inviting some of the supporters, some of the students and people that are, supporters of Learn Squared, get them on the stream, get them on the Skype call, and have them to ask questions. Much like you guys ask questions in the chat, but this time, those guys, my guests here, will take priority. We're trying to figure out like a new system, see if this is more interesting, if this works better, if this is more informative and better for you guys. I think it's also some kind of thank you and kudos to you guys for being around Learn Squared and being supporters, because without you guys there's no school. It's as simple as that. So yeah, I think Momo is going to be helping out on the chat side of things and making sure that we can get questions from you guys who are on the chat as well. But I want to start with my team. Guys, can you maybe do a round table, introduce yourself and who you are and all that, just briefly, and then we'll go on. I don't know who to start with.
I'm Ron. I'm in New Orleans. I work for TurboSquid.
Yep. Thanks, Ron. Thanks for joining. We know each other very well already.
Thanks for having. It was thanks for Momo for inviting me.
Awesome. Who's next?
Uh,
Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Can hear you.
Okay. Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm an industrial designer, and I'm from Long Beach.
Nice. So we have Ron, we have Ryan. We have a guy from Finland.
Hi,
That's you.
I'm Kai, and I'm basically between careers at the moment. So I'm studying to become a 3D artist, and so.
Cool. All right. I think we have a guy from Philippines as well, with the little logo.
what do I? You mean the red logo thing?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. That's like my initial, man. It's just the N.
That's all right. I know.
Yeah.
I know you don't have a camera, so I was just mentioning.
Yeah, it's just like my one profile thing. Yeah. So anyway, hi everyone. My name's Nicholas. I'm from Malaysia. It's now 4 a.m, but I'm right here.
There we go.
I'm still awake.
4 a.m. You know what?
Yeah, 6 a.m.
I congratulate you, because I would not wake up for that. I would be like, fuck that.
It seemed kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I've never done this before myself. Yeah.
Me neither. I've done a bunch of streams before. I've done like art cafes. I had guests. I think one of the first art cafes I had was like 8 guests or something. So that was kind of interesting. And finally we have Kalina. Kalina, how are you? I don't think she can hear us.
Audio off.
Her mic might be out.
Yeah, mic might be out. All right. Whenever your mic is on, just let us know. If otherwise, yeah, just stay here. Cool. All right, guys. So I was thinking about starting about a subject, where to start. Like what would be the starting point, and maybe talk about the career, where to go if you're in a position of, let's say, hey, I want to be an artist. I learn things. I attend schools. I go to Learn Squirt primarily, obviously, and then some other schools that are less interesting, such as Art Center. I don't know. But yeah, like let's say you're in a point where you wanna start your career, and I think that's it's an interesting topic to talk about. And obviously, I want you guys to ask questions in the meantime, even if they're not related. That's fine. And I also want to make sure that you guys who are with the cameras here with me on the Skype call, I want your questions to be also more personal. So if you have something that is specifically interesting for you, go ahead and ask. Like, don't be obligated to follow the topic that I want to try to start with. So, but yeah, I want to start with where to start, like, because I get that question quite a lot, and a lot of people ask it, and and it's a struggle, because I've been through it myself, and some of the things that I will say might not be relevant to the industry as of today, because when I was learning and I was trying to become an artist, it was a little different industry. So just to give you a little bit of to lay the ground and show you, or describe how different it is. When I was starting in video games, for instance, the team sizes were on average 20 people, maybe 30. Some of the companies were just starting to get into next generation gaming, which is like normal maps and bump maps and all of that stuff, like real-time lighting. And then those teams grew to like hundreds of people, right? So that's one of the changes. So getting into a video games company was hard because they only had like a small team, for instance. Second thing, there was no ZBrush. There was no social media, really. It was maybe MySpace. A lot of those things were missing from the universe. So I had to kind of go around and use forums to, navigate my worldview and figure out what is this art thing. There was no like tutorials, no videos. The only thing that was available there was I think Gnomon DVDs were there. I don't think there was any competitor to Gnomon at all back then. So have that in perspective, because some of my life choices and decisions were driven by the fact that I didn't have any of the perks or any of those things that you have right now, basically. Meaning, social media, emails, contacts, everything. So
would you say it could be also an advantage or disadvantage now, just because the industry's got like, there's so many people now that can get involved versus, in the past it was, more niche, or
it was different. It was different.
Okay.
I'll tell you this. So I have my friend Paul Osimo. I talked about Paul a couple of times. So he is like one of those veteran designers, illustrators in film, and his first job was for James Cameron. And as far as I remember, and I hope I remember it correctly. If not, I'll take the blame. I'll take those angry phone calls from Paul. But as far as I remember, he told me that they were hiring everyone who was even available to do any kind of work in town back then, because there was no industry really. You had art. I don't think there was. I mean, maybe Art Center was doing something, but they didn't have entertainment design. It was more like industrial design driven stuff. So they didn't have entertainment design back then. So there was no specific education towards that, right? So even from that time, where if you were just good enough, you would work on films with James Cameron, basically. Now it's
Hell
like
yeah.
you go on the art station. There's just it's overpopulated with art, right? So
It's
that's
saturated.
yeah, it's super saturated. So that is a caveat we have to take into consideration with this discussion. Knowing that, hey, like I'm here today. I have ArtStation, millions of artists. How do I get a job? Because that is the problem. That is the biggest problem right now. So for me, it was a little different because maybe I didn't have so much competition when I was joining, but then again, I didn't have resources to learn from. It was very hard to find any resources and actually learn to that high level or get to any of the good levels of art. But also no ways of expressing your resources either. Meaning, how am I supposed to reach out to those companies, right? Or how am I supposed to stand out? How people can find me? Bear in mind, it was like not even Squarespace. I don't think Squarespace existed back then either.
Right.
Yeah, like everyone was doing their own HTML.
Oh,
And that's, by the way, that's just 12 years ago. Okay, so how this is the rapid change of the industry. Industry is changing rapidly, really, really fast. So, and that's just 12 years. No ZBrush, Photoshop 2, without autosave. None of that was there. It's rough times, man. I remember those times where I would paint something and it would crash. And fuck, I didn't save. It was like 4 hours
oh
of
God.
work lost. So
Do you,
annoying.
do you see do you see VR and AR sort of like that new frontier where there's not as many people getting into it yet? There's a lot of potential there for artists.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it's there yet. So like
Okay,
I see there's quite a few artists, including like Jama. Jama is probably the guy who
yeah,
you guys
Jama's
are
doing
familiar
crazy
the
stuff.
most. He's great, but I mean, I've worked on a job already that is VR related, but I didn't do any of the VR stuff for it. I
Right.
did just regular illustrations, right? So bear that in mind as well. Also, it it might change 2 years from now. You just don't know. Okay, so
Sure.
there's just it's just moving forward so fast. It's really hard to tell. Technology is moving really fast. It's really easy to learn. So, okay, so how to get started? And I'll maybe start with the premise, and you guys obviously chime in with your questions. Whenever you have a question, just maybe raise your hand in the camera. I'll try to I'll try to pay attention to that, and so that we don't overlap one another. If there's more people, that's really really difficult to, and especially with the Skype delay, it might be a little difficult to not talk over one another. So, but yeah. So where do I start? So I think the most important thing for artists today is to be open to learning and not be discouraged by the fact that things are not coming along as fast as you expect them to come along. So I'm gonna unpack that real quick. So um, if you're learning something, let's say you want to learn how to be a 3D artist, right? Like I want to work as a 3D artist for the industry. I want to I want to maybe work in the video games and model like vehicles, or be one of those guys who is responsible for the background art, meaning you basically build buildings and use ZBrush stuff, whatever that is, right? Um, so how do I get there? So first of all, you obviously you need to learn software. You need to learn foundation, which takes time. And I think today it's easier to start without solid foundation, and even without solid foundation, but really good technical skills, you'll get somewhere. Like you'll have at least you'll reach the threshold in which you are able to work, basically. Like someone will hire you for work, right? Whether it's someone finds you or you apply to a job and you get that work, right? It doesn't have to be, your first job being at Naughty Dog. It doesn't have to be, whatever that is, like Treyarch or Infinity Ward, any of those big companies that work on huge titles. It can be a small company for, I don't know, like it could be a mobile game, right? Whatever that would be. But reaching that threshold in which you're hireable, I believe is not that difficult today as it used to be before. especially when it comes to technical stuff, like software related stuff, right? Like if you're good at copying, like let's say if you get really good with the software, really technical with the software, and you'll be able to model really complex shapes, but not design them, but model them, right? Really complex shapes with like really good efficiency in terms of topology, in terms of like, you know, how optimized they are for video games and whatnot. If you learn that, you'll find a job in video games because there's still market for that. I'm not necessarily saying that it's gonna be a market for that 5 years from now, especially seeing how the software is moving forward. Like for me, I can render, model, texture, and do all of that stuff already. It's not gonna be optimized, obviously, but someone can take it and work with that. That doesn't have to be built from scratch by a person, oftentimes, right? In film specifically, I can create props and send them directly for printing. There's a whole sector of work that used to be there that is fading away because of that. Like using Fusion 360, all of that stuff. Like with the Ghost in the Shell, for instance, that's exactly what happened. I would send my CAD files to production. They would have a person that would do a cleanup, so it's ready for printing, and that's it. And it would just go to the printer. So they don't, 10 years ago, I would have to draw a model, or I have to draw a concept of a gun or something, and basically someone would have to build it from scratch, and then someone would have to, print it, or there wasn't even printing back then. So, but this is how it's moving, and yeah, I think the threshold to start is very, very low. Or it's not as high as people think it is. Again, I might be wrong. I might be obviously wrong about everything I say, but I'm just talking about from my own perspective.
It's like specialist. There's so much specialization now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I would say that, you basically described my past 3 years. Because I started learning Blender 3 years ago,
mm-hmm.
and now I'm interning evenings on a game company, just doing 3D models, and obviously learning everything that I can. But
right.
So the way you describe it, that's basically what's going on with me.
Well, it's a start, right? So
yeah,
where do you think you're going with this? Like, what is your goal as of today?
Well, I like to be a concept artist.
Mm-hmm.
So, and basically what I need for that is a lot more skills than I have at the moment. So, what I'm actually lacking is basic drawing skills. So,
right.
I can do 3D models from reference pretty easily, but if I need to make a decent render and paint over, that's where I struggle a lot.
Got it. So I think for you, and I haven't seen your work, so I can't say much about that just yet. But I know quite a few people that wanted to make that shift. I'm doing 3D. I want to start doing concept. So I think in other shifts as well. Like I had Emmanuel Shu on Art Cafe before. He used to be matte painter. Like he has nothing to do with concept art, but he was really passionate. Like, hey, I wanna really be a concept artist, right? I wanna really work on illustrations rather than this. So he was chipping away. I'll do my work, but in the free time, I'll just focus on that. So for concept art specifically, so here's what I think. It's something that is a difficult thing for people to understand is with illustration, I believe, is much more difficult than any kind of technical 3D stuff, because technical 3D stuff you can learn quickly. Like it's just software, and a year from now, the software is going to be improved. It's going to have things to the UI and UX is going to improve. It's going to be easier. I remember times where was it 4 years ago? If you launch V-Ray 2.0, good luck setting it up so it doesn't render for hours. unless you know exactly every detail of how sampling works, how you clean up, noisy areas and all of that. Like that was just a nightmare to set up. Grant Warwick did his mastering V-Ray course started with that. So I picked it up just to learn how V-Ray works, because I knew V-Ray is great. Gavril Klimov actually turned me into following what V-Ray does, and paying attention like how good of a software it is. But it was just a nightmare to set up. Today you just literally press render. You don't have to touch anything. You just press render and it works, and it will automatically find the right settings for you. Same goes, I think, with Arnold. Arnold does the same thing, where it's just adaptively, or by default, it has the default settings that are good. And if you're like a freak that wants to, you really value your seconds, then you will find the way to optimize it, obviously. And I think it only matters for animation at that point. If you're doing like hundreds of frames and you have to render, and if you can shave off 5 seconds of each frame, it's gonna save you hours of rendering. So that's the area where it only matters at this point. So, but I'm giving an example. Like 4 years ago, V-Ray, incredibly difficult to learn, to understand. You had to adding more samples didn't necessarily mean better quality, which makes no sense, because it also adding more samples means more quality, but it's how you add it and where. Because if you add too many here, you're not rendering that many there. It's just like you would have to be a mathematician to understand the whole concept, right? So a lot of people did just I'm gonna add 1,000 samples, let it render for 10 hours, but at least I know it's gonna be clean. Today you have GPU rendering, it's all press and go. It's very easy, right? So those technical stuff, it's easier to learn, it's easier to start, but it's also easier to replace. And that's one of the things that you have to understand. So if you want to be, let's say I want to be a concept artist, I really want to shift from that 3D world. I'm doing modeling, I'm working for companies, I'm doing this and that. I really want to be more engaged in the design process. So there's certain areas where we should start. Basically, foundation is always going to be a key, no matter what. Because learning how to draw in Photoshop, you can pick up 2 or 3 tutorials. If you watch them closely and you follow the way exactly those artists work, you'll be able to understand how to paint. But it doesn't mean you're going to understand how to paint correctly or how to paint things that look good. You're just going to grasp the concept of painting, right? Very easily. Again, it's a technical skill. But then comes foundation, meaning, hey, I need to understand perspective, right? I need to understand lighting, how lighting works. And I think for 3D artists, it's going to be much easier task to grasp, because 3D already gives you perspective. So, but learning how technically it works, where the vanishing points are, it will just be very easy for you to understand it, knowing that you already model in 3D, you already are in the 3D world, right? Learning lighting is going to be quite easy as well if you have any experience with rendering. Relaying anything to rendering will make understanding concepts of lighting super easy for painting. And I even in my class, Intro to Environment Painting, I actually teach from the 3D perspective, like 3D artist perspective, where you pay attention to direct lighting, you pay attention to global illumination, you pay attention to ambient occlusion, all of those things, right? And then finally, color. Color comes also from understanding lighting. I think those two are connected when you learn them. And then design. I think design is the big part as well, right? Where you have to grasp concepts behind, what are the principles of design? What is balance, right? What balance means in the design? What hierarchy means in the design? What repetition, scale, all of those things. There's so many, layers of understanding design principles, and they're very vague and ambiguous. When you just read them, it's yeah, it kind of makes sense, but what it really means, right? And the way I explain it is, I'm actually working with, I'm doing another apprenticeship with Aaron Danda he's one of the students for Learn Squared. You will have that stuff soon added to my class. But when he's designing, so he's doing the futuristic character design, and when he's designing a helmet, like one of the mistakes a lot of artists do when they design things in 3D or in 2D, whatever, is like they populate details everywhere. So spacing the details, right? Where do you add details? Do you populate the same surface with the same amount of details everywhere that are spaced evenly? That's not a good design. So, spacing, that's exactly what if you learn what spacing means, that's exactly what you're going to start paying attention to, right? The moment you understand, like you grasp the concept and observe, then you start paying attention to it. It's so many layers and it takes years to understand and learn. But you just have to take it every step of the way, right? So, yeah, Ron, what's up?
No, I was gonna add to that, Maciej, because I think Jama had a great course on sort of what you're talking about, like the composition and the balance, and a lot of it was his ability to work abstractly.
Right.
It just darks and lights and playing with scales. And before you going in there and really detailing anything, it was something very valuable to me. It was I was learning more rapidly by learning. Hey, you don't have to sit there and struggle with, did I get this face right? Because at this point, it's the least important thing. It's the balancing of the composition.
Right. And by the way, so what was your name again? The guy from Finland.
Kai.
Kai. Okay.
Kai. Yeah.
Sorry. I should start with the prefix that I'm horrible with names. I think the older I get, my memory is working worse and worse.
Well, when you get my age, you have no excuses.
How old are you, by the way?
42.
42. Okay. Hey, Mark Kent is about your age, and I think he started around your age too. So it's never too late.
Yeah.
That's one of the misconceptions as well. Like, I'm not in my 20s. I'm not gonna be an artist anymore. No, that's bullshit. You might not be, I don't know, Craig Mullins, because you're not gonna have the same amount of experience. The years of experience that he spent in learning to be an artist. But you'll eventually get to a point where you can work, and do what you're passionate about. And I think that's more important than anything. But yeah, so Kai, for you, I'd say start with like a topic, like because you already work, you already have, you already do what you do. So maybe if you start practicing things like, let me start with maybe understanding what the design principles are, right? So when you work with references, and when you say, okay, this is a reference, I'm gonna model that car or model that camera, instead of just copying what you see, it's you start observe what is the design purpose behind it, like why it's looking that way, right? Like it's a good starting point, because the moment you start understanding what you're copying, the easier it gets to actually be creative and start your own things. Like when you look at the barrel, like when you look at the weapon, you understand that there's a trigger, you understand where the magazine goes in, you understand like the rail on top is for attachments, and once you do a little research and understand how those things work, then you know their function and purpose in the design. So next time let's say I want to design my own weapon, you'll have those things in mind, instead of just looking at, because that's what happens a lot. Like and I did it myself for many years, where I would look at the reference and I was like, oh, this is cool tech, right? And I would try to design something sci-fi and bash together some weird pieces, and that would make no sense. And the moment something doesn't make sense, it's the moment where the design doesn't speak to you and looks average, right? So I think starting there and then going by topic and trying to improve on those areas. And there's so much material out there to learn from, but I think starting with foundation will help you a lot, even though it's going to be mundane and long road. But
yeah, I started the environment concept course, and like I really understand like the fundamentals really make sense, and like you actually have to grasp those before you can actually move on, because it's just it all lays on top of that. So
yep, exactly. Like good example is this. So it's in my class basically, right? So I started with obviously perspective and all of that stuff. But one of the topics or one of the things you do as a homework is basically taking a piece of architecture and breaking it down into like very simple geometrical shapes, and then making sure that the breakdown of those geometrical shapes is done with the perspective that is taken from that reference, right? So you look at reference, you decide, okay, this is where the vanishing points are for this reference, and then you draw boxes and cylinders on top of that geometry or on top of that architectural piece to decide what is the simplest geometry that define this piece, right? And then the next thing you do is rotate the camera and try to draw the same geometry that you just broken down from the completely different view, right? So it's a task that is not an easy one. It seems easy on the start. It was making difficulties to me as well. But what it teaches you as well is the way you look at surfaces and how they act in perspective. Because then, when you're at the point where you're using textures and photo references for your painting, you're gonna start paying attention from which direction the camera is looking at those references. So you're not gonna paste the photo just to put the photo on top of your painting so it fills out. No, you're gonna choose a photo that is close, or you're gonna edit the photo so it looks like it's in the proper perspective. And that's what a lot of people don't pay attention to. A lot of artists that start never pay attention to that, because if you don't know foundation, or if you're not paying attention to foundation, you're gonna ignore that. And it's like, that's what makes a good painting versus or good photo bashing versus bad photo bashing. Let's put it this way. So, and don't be afraid of using references, by the way, guys. Everyone is using references, and every artist all of them use references. The painters, the guys who paint those amazing portraits, they use references too. They don't have their model, like most of them don't have a model sitting there especially for like very finished painting. They don't have a model sitting there for 2 days in a row or like a whole day. They'll make photos as well and finish the painting later with photo references from the initial session where, the live drawing session, right? So even Shadi was talking about that. Like when he would go plein air, he would start with a sketch on the site and then make photos, I believe. I don't think he was making I think he was making photos, or maybe not, I don't know. But he would start on the site, do it plein air, and then finish, like add an hour or two at home, because it's impossible to capture all the details with the short amount of time in which the lighting is changing. If you have a live model's going to move, all of that stuff. So anyways, cool. All right, Kai.
Maciej,
Yeah, go ahead.
I had a quick question on going back to like when you were in Poland and kind of in your transition phase into concept art. What was like an average like session where you said, okay, I'm going to sit down and learn? Was it like, how did you define your goals, or how did you choose? Were you like, oh, I'm going to work on some fundamental exercises, or oh, I'm just going to complete this piece? How did you organize your sort of learning process as you were just starting out?
Dude, I was like a headless chicken.
Oh no.
I was like a headless chicken. So the way I was approaching it, I was actually lucky enough to meet people that turned to be semi-mentors along the way. So people who were artistically way better than me. They were like really good artists. I've met them over internet, obviously, like on forums. That's where I found about a lot of those guys. And then, instant messaging helped a lot, talking with people. I remember talking a lot with John Liberto, the Captain Flush Garden from Siege and forums. I remember talking a lot with the guys from Platage Image, VFX company in Poland. One of the guys over there, Rafael Wojtyniuk, I think. Yeah, that's his name. he was really helpful along the way. Like when I was learning, he would always nag about like you fucking approaching it wrong. Like go learn some fundamentals, and you know you're not drawing in perspective. And I was like, fuck off, you know. I don't want to learn that. I don't want to learn that, you know. But those people influenced me to go in the right direction, meaning like starting to pay attention to perspective, starting to pay attention to lighting when I'm painting, like all of that stuff. I had a more unorthodox sort of self-taught approach, not like a academic. Like when you go to university, you have a very structured way of learning, right? You start with foundation, and then you develop those skills, and once you reach a certain point, you move on and blah blah blah, right? So you have very structured, and I think that's the best way to learn still, because you learn, especially for foundation. Like it's the best way to learn, and then I think also within that you just have to look at what's the reality of today, how software moved on, and where of those foundational skills you can replace with software that is already, can replace that. Like you're not gonna try to count numbers for taxes. You're gonna use TurboTax, right? If you're doing taxes, like you're not gonna do it by hand with the calculator. Like even like, oh, how much? You're not gonna be like counting numbers, trying to figure out like how is 21 times 58 minus whatever. You're gonna use calculator or Google, right? Because it's already existing. What's the point? Like it's already there. Unless you're expecting there's gonna be no like electricity for next 10 years, I don't know. Then maybe we're fucked. But that's a different topic. But since the tools are already there, use those, right? So for instance, if you can shortcut your way for perspective, use 3D, right? Use 3D to understand perspective. Like if you're having troubles to understand how the cylinder is going to look in perspective, just build them in 3D and move your camera around and observe. Build a grid, whatever. Like it will just give you an idea what things should look like, and use that as a shortcut. But mix it with foundation. So for me, it was like a little bit of, because I haven't had any academic way of learning. I didn't go to any art schools or anything like that. I've learned everything by going on forums and just being really resilient and just like never giving up, I always wanted to paint. I mean, my own, I think what helped me was the fact that I had two choices. One, the moment I realized like art can sustain your life. So either learning and doing that, because I like doing that, or cleaning toilets in hospitals, So it's two choices, I don't know which one would be better. I think I turned out better by just pursuing art career than being a janitor, because I didn't like cleaning those fucking toilets. I will tell you that. It's not the most pleasant thing to do, especially in hospitals. You never know what you're gonna see.
Well, Maciej, what was some of your biggest aha moments along the way? What was something that made you go, "Oh, I think I'm fucking getting it"?
I said this many times. Like the biggest turning point for me was when I understood that you can do digital art as a job, and that was when I saw back in 2003 there was this short film done by Tomek Bagiński. It's called The Cathedral. It was nominated to Academy Award, and that was a big influence for me to understand. Okay, like I want to, because I saw it, I was like, wow, it looks really cool, and it was done with computers. That's cool. And then I was watching TV, and it so happened that they did like a very short documentary. I think it was like 4 minutes about the making of, where they were showing like a guy drawing on the computer. Like he's drawing on computer. Like what? Drawing on computer? What? You can do that? And he's working in the company and doing that, and they're getting paid. Like, oh, that's something interesting. Because I was like pencils, that kind of guy.
Right.
So yeah, that was that aha moment for me. Like understanding that this can be a job, and then what happens there is like every one of us is different, right? So you're different. You all come from different backgrounds. You all have different goals with life. You all have different expectations. What do you want to learn? You've been influenced with life in a very profoundly different way, whether it's your friends, parents, environment you grew up with, what you've learned along the way. Like all of those things matter so much to your own perspective, you know? So the way I look at it is like, obviously taking an advice from someone is good to take advice, but don't take it for granted. Like this is the only way that it works. But on average, let's say on average, when you talk for most or for average amount of people, not the fringes, like the worst and the best, just like right in the middle, right? What's the biggest group in the middle? On average, resilience and really just like never giving up on what you do is very good predicament whether you're gonna stick around or not, you know? Because it's hard. It's hard to learn this shit and be good at it, you know? But you just have to realize it just takes time, and you can do it, you know? And how fast it's gonna be, there's so many layers to that. It depends on your genetics, obviously, because your brain might understand perspective and space much better than someone else's brain, and that's your strength. But maybe someone else's strength is more related to understanding colors, you know? It's just like we're so different. So one person will be better at this, the other person will be better at this. I'll give you an example about perspectives and what works. So for instance, Ash is a very structured person, like Ash Thorpe, super structured person. Like he lives by a calendar, has everything by a calendar, by a minute. And or in the same way, Vitaly Bulgarov, right? They do like their own list of things, what they're gonna do to a minute. Like between 10 a.m. till 12, I'm doing this. Then I'm finished, jumping on a call. 12:30, I'm jumping off the call, getting lunch. 1:30, meet another call, whatever, work. It's just like, it's super structured. For me, it never works that way. I spend more time worrying and figuring out what is my calendar for a day. I try to have a structured day, obviously. I'll live by a calendar to a point to understand, like, okay, this is the meeting I have to be at. This is the call I have to be on. This is the stream I have to do. This is the work I have to do. But I don't have it structured in a way that from this moment to this moment I'm doing this, because it never works for me. Because I worry about doing stuff on time rather than worrying about doing stuff right. And it's because my brain doesn't work that way, right? So what works for me, for instance, is figuring out what is the most important thing I need to do in a day and doing that, and only focusing on doing that. And whatever else can be added on top of it, great. Like, that's awesome. So it same goes to education and how you are going to pursue and follow, right? For someone, it might be just systematically learning foundation and doing that. For someone else, it might be just getting a good understanding on foundation, but then trying to do more creative work. You know, it's just everyone's so different. But I think an overall spectrum, if you have to be passionate about what you're doing, that, like, if you have to really know that I want to be an artist, I want to work as an artist, I enjoy doing that, and if it's really hard, it becomes a really hard thing to do, I'll still enjoy doing that because I see the reward. Like, not giving up on the fact that 5 hours in, you're still nowhere. And that means maybe your approach is wrong, or maybe you just need to make another 20 hours until you get somewhere, you know? So I think the resilience is the biggest one. All right. We have two more guests here that didn't ask questions yet.
Yeah, so Maciej, so getting on that bit about work and time, do you have, like, within 24 hours of the day, like, how many hours do you put into, like, your professional work and something like, say, Learn Square and any of your other obligations? Like, what's the time for you like?
It's too many things right now for me. I will tell you that. Even though I scaled down, I'll tell you this. Having a family changes a lot of things, right? Not just you know, whether you're married or not, but just having kids. It changes a lot because it just throws out of the window the idea of having structured day or structured things, because kids will ruin it for you. But I still want to keep everything sort of, organized. So I have the way I work is by priorities. I don't work by structure anymore. Like working by structure, I would get frustrated because all of a sudden I need to do like an emergency family thing, or I need to do something for client because I'm getting a phone call that they need something really quick, whatever, right? Or there's a meeting with Ash or whatever,
Sure.
whatever that is, right? There's always been points where I found I'm running out of time because I've planned my day so perfectly that I didn't account for those emergencies or things that might happen along the way that I didn't account for. So I switched it to work with priorities, and it works better for me specifically. And I prioritize my life as well. Like, so I start with the high level to lower levels. So breaking down every task you do by priorities as well. So I'll give you an example. So like for me, obviously the biggest priorities is family. Having kids, that kind of makes it the biggest priority. But but also school and doing client work. So basically supporting family, right? So one is priority, one is necessity, and one is something that I like to do, right? So priority would be my family, necessity would be working and still doing work for clients, and then the cool thing is school, right? Things related to school, which is a big priority for me as well, because this is my baby, basically, mine and Ash's. In a way, Ash and Andrew are basically my two husbands almost. It's like when you have a business partner, they're as close as your family, like as your closest family, basically. So you have to treat them that way too. It's almost like being married with two guys. That's how it feels, like all at once. But yeah, so I work with priorities, and I know, okay, so during the day, I'm gonna spend X amount of time with family no matter what. And then I'll finish my client work, and then I'll spend time that I need to spend on Learn Squared or whatever that is, right? And then everything else, my personal work, art cafes, I don't know, doing merchandise, whatever that is, right? Anything else that is there, it's like a playground of toys that if I have time for it, I'll just grab one and play with it, right? And that's the only way. Is if you have a busy life where you have a lot of things going on, that's the only way that works for me. So for someone, it might be just working by schedule. That works too. But I think the biggest changer for me in terms of understanding and organizing things in my life was reading Eat That Frog. That was suggested by Vitaly and Ash.
That's a great book.
It's an awesome book because it basically talks about priorities and really tackling the most difficult things as the first thing during the day. It's the most difficult things are the ones that you're gonna procrastinate upon the most, because you're not gonna like, I don't want to fucking touch it. Like, it's just so difficult. I can guarantee, like, the moment you take the hard task and break it down into smaller goals, and you prioritize which of those smaller goals is the most important one, and start with that, and then go down the list, in no time it will be solved. Like, you will get, like, there's something called flow state that it exists in sport, exists in pretty much any other discipline. You can see those sometimes happens, like if you watch a soccer game, or if you watch like players, like pool players, where like everything they do is just perfect, freaking works, and they just become a superstar of a game. It's because they are in the flow state. Like, they don't think anymore, they just do. Just like they're in like this perfect spot where everything comes together and they just do it without even thinking. Like, they're moving like this unstoppable force. And I think it's even scientifically proven that our brains work that way. Like, you can get into that flow state where you don't conceive time anymore. You don't conceive things as tasks anymore. You just do them, When you see two players playing tennis, like, the ball that goes across the tennis court, it goes too fast for you to react. So you're not even thinking about reacting. You're just playing the game. So if you can get to that state, and I think the only way to get to that state is just start, and prioritize, start, and just continuously doing so without interruptions. So you can remove any interruptions from your life during that time where you're tackling the most important problem. That is what's going to make you productive, right? So once you tackle the biggest thing, then you go to a smaller thing, and then everything else is not important. You know, there's this saying 20-80%, right? So 20% of the things you do have 80% of impact on your life. And that's true. And that 20% is usually the hardest task during the day. So,
I see.
yeah.
Cool.
Is Kalina with us still?
Yes, I'm
awesome.
here.
Awesome.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can
I
hear you
got
very
a
well.
question.
Go ahead.
So I've kind of realized I've been obsessed with just art for months, and I guess worried too about art, and it's become to a point where I somehow managed to get myself bored of making art.
Oh, like you getting bored of making
Yeah,
art?
yeah, it's super weird.
um,
I
so
wonder if you've gotten into such a state before, actually.
your mic is a little crackling. I don't know if you're moving your mic or something like that, but it's
Yeah, sorry. It's my mic.
yeah.
I'm
So
moving it.
yeah. So I think every artist get bored at some point. And I'm actually in the stage where I don't really want to do any personal work right now. Like I rather just sit on the couch and do nothing and touch Photoshop or anything like that. Like I'm on
Yeah.
this stage for like last couple of weeks. So if anyone who follows me on social media probably noticed that I'm not posting anything really at all. It's just like I think sometimes you just need that time where you relax and not really take things seriously anymore. I think the biggest mistake that you can make is like when you're in the fray of learning, or we're in the fray of working for clients and doing all of those things all at once. It just becomes like a race where you have to just like, I need to do this, and you never have that moment where you stop and do something that you just really want to do at this moment, right? So I, for longest time, and that's where you get burned out, I think. And that's what happens with like you get a little bit burned out and you don't want to do an art anymore, and that happens to all of us. It's just like take your brain off of it for a while and focus on things that you're excited about at the moment. And I think
So
that
I
helps.
shouldn't force it, right? I guess I
Yeah.
should take a break.
Yeah, taking a break is important. Like having the
Yeah.
right amount of sleep, guys, is so important too. Like if you don't sleep well, it's a misconception that if you work late, you're gonna get much more things done. That's not true. Because I had days where I've done all of my work in 2 hours. That was more difficult than on other day, which I've spent maybe 6-8 hours to do less difficult work, and the results were more horrible than the 2 hour work from the other day. And it's because I was well rested and prepared for like really good flow, right? Being in that flow where everything just clicking and you're doing an amazing job, versus being tired, red-eyed, like fuck, where's my coffee? Like you're not thinking straight. Like your brain capacity lowers, and especially for creative work, when you need to do something creative, you need to come up with ideas, and even just working with references or painting things that are not necessarily creatively the best, it still requires your brain power to fuel. Like you still have to think about how you paint. You still have to think about lighting. You still have to think about foundation. Like it's a thinking process. Even though the hand movement is there, it's not really that difficult to move your hand and paint. But still, the thinking process is there. Everything you do on the screen will make your brain, fire in all directions, because you just have to think. And then if it becomes a creative job where you have to come up with ideas, it's even more difficult, because apart from just thinking about painting, you're also thinking about what you're painting. So taking a break is important, I think. Also, what helps is exercise, any kinds of exercise, whether you go walk, whether you go for a run, or if you do like a gym or classes, whatever that is. Exercise creates, it's not dopamine. What was in the brain?
Endorphins?
What's up?
Endorphins?
Endorphins. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, any kinds of exercise creates endorphins in your brain. So you're gonna be physically tired after exercise, but you're gonna have millions of ideas. I can guarantee you that. If you know when I go for a run or something, I think about things that I want to do instead of like I'm gonna go for a run to relax and not think about work, and then I end up thinking about work because I want to think about work because my brain like suddenly fires up and I have all of those ideas that I never had. So it's a good idea to not neglect physical movement of any sort. I found also I started doing intermittent fasting as well. Personally, it works really well for me. I don't know if it works well for everyone. Something you would have to go and research about. But I found that cutting most of carbs from my life, for instance, and doing intermittent fasting, what it does to me, it's like I don't crave things anymore, and I don't get crashes during the day. So my energy level from the morning till evening is constant. Like I don't have highs and lows in most cases. I have pretty much the same amount of energy throughout a day. And it helps also to not have those moments where you're like completely crashed and you're like fucking tired and you need to do work during that time, right? So that helps too. But yeah, taking a break, like go play video games or something, you know, whatever that is. Just don't think about doing anything for a while. I also want to make sure that there's a distinction between being burnt out versus being lazy, because that happens too. There's a fine line that you need to be sure that you don't cross. Burnt out means you thinking about work or thinking about painting makes you sick, right? You don't want to do it. Like fuck, I don't want to do it. Versus starting a painting and then realizing it's difficult and then saying to self, I'm burnt out, I'm not gonna finish it. That's a big difference, okay? Because if you started something, working on something, that means you already had an idea for it, right? And you're hitting the wall, and it's difficult, and it's supposed to be, because getting a reward of finished painting isn't supposed to be easy. Getting any reward isn't supposed to be easy, because if it's easy, then you get no reward, and that's the problem, right? And that's how our brains unfortunately work as well. Like just the idea that when something comes easy, you get that dopamine rush at the moment you get it, but then the as fast as you are getting happy with it, this is also as fast as you forget about it too. You know, that's why like people that go on shopping sprees and buy a lot of like gadgets, they keep the gadget for a week and then they get bored and buy a new one. There's like no value in it. Versus like if you buy something that has maybe not the newest shiniest thing, like car collectors, right? Like if you buy like a really cool old car and you work on it, that's so much more valuable for you because it takes a fucking lot of time and energy and money to actually rebuild the car and then be proud of it. But then you're gonna keep it for years, right? Versus like leasing a car every 2 years you don't even care about, you know. So I don't know if it's a good analogy, but yeah, like there's a fine line where, you know, you might just not find, you might just be hitting the wall without finding solution, right? So that's a different problem, obviously. But then like if you get bored, if you like literally waking up and you're dredging the idea of doing any work or painting, I think that's the moment where you have to sort of like relax down if you can. Still focus on doing those important things that you need to do during the day. Don't neglect them. But then whatever free time you have, spend it on things that are maybe not related to work anymore, at least for a while. You know, it will get you in the mood of, you know, if art is passion for you, you're gonna get, it's like starvation for you. you eventually get starved with like, oh fuck, I need to do something after all. So I'm getting there personally. So I have some
Yeah,
ideas
happen.
running in my head.
Mm.
Yeah, happens to everyone. Every artist has it. I think I think the biggest thing about today and social media in general is that social media are so fake. When you look at Facebook profiles and Instagram profiles, you only get a surface like an actor's acting point of view. You don't get a real life point of view on what's really going on. People like to share the things that go well, and they never share the things that go bad, right? So you get very skewed view about people in general, and because we have really short attention spans as well, we tend to forget that someone wasn't posting for 6 months, and then when they post, oh cool, new art from this guy, and but we never question why they didn't post anything for 6 months, right? We never question that, and the reasons can be very different. It might be something like I didn't want to paint, or maybe I was in that crash where I didn't want to do any creative work. It happens to everyone. It's just like the perception we have through the social media is that lives are perfect for everyone else, but not for me. Therefore, there's something wrong with me, and that's a wrong approach. Like, you should never think that way. I personally know people, like the friends that I hang out with, I know their lives really well, and I know also some people that have very difficult lives. But if you just follow their profiles on social media and how frequently they post or whatever, you'll think their lives are perfect. But all of us have problems, whether it's family, work, whatever that is. There's health issues. There's a lot of things that happen, or just being burned out is one of those two. So it happens to everyone. So cool. All right, guys. I'm gonna grab a couple of questions from chat as
Sure.
well.
I sent in questions.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Thank you for that, Kalina. It was really helpful.
No problem.
Yeah, I got that. So I'm gonna go through a few of them for you guys and wrap it up there. That was cool. I actually enjoyed having a conversation like that where I can actually see your faces. I need to figure out a way you guys can see my face as well on Skype. So next time I have guests, you guys can see my face and not just follow with the delay on Twitch to see what's going on, because it's a one-way conversation that I don't like. I like a face-to-face kind of interaction. It's more, I don't know, there's something interesting about it. It's definitely more personal and makes it better.
Absolutely, and the time flew.
Yep, that's true. Time is flying. Goddamn, like we've been here for an hour now.
Yeah,
It's insane. Let's see. All right, oh my god, there's so many questions. Well, actually, no. I was scrolling all the way up to the past questions as well from other days. Let's see. Let's start with the first one. I have a question. If it's impossible to choose to study gaming instead of cinema because I love both design fields, is it crazy to learn both? All right, so it depends on what exactly you want to do, because those are two different fields and have different jobs. But I would assume, because it's a question to me, obviously, then I'll assume it's a concept art related question. Don't focus on that at all. Don't focus whether it's games or cinema. I'll tell you that working for video games and working for films is different only on some technical aspects. Creatively, it's exactly the same thing. There's almost no differences. You're creating ideas, and then just the only difference is how deep you go into specific parts of it. Like if it's in video games, let's say if you're designing environments for video games, you're gonna have a different kinds of jobs related to that. You're still gonna do keyframes for both, in most cases, but in games you're gonna be focusing more on working with designers eventually, like game designers. In film, you're going to be working with set designers. So that's a similarity. But then in film, you might be more constrained with scale of things and, how many things can fit on the set. Versus in games, you're going to focus more on how many things can be in the console memory and how many things you can really squeeze in on the screen. So the differences are not that big for just learning the craft, right? So I wouldn't focus on whether you like films or games. Doesn't really matter. Like, you have to get the foundation right. Once you get the foundation right, and then you'll find your style. That's the only way to go, in my opinion. Right. Let's see. Applying to studios online through a login register program versus direct contact to someone in HR. Okay. So what I would do, and I advise this, I advise it to everyone who wants to be taken seriously, especially in video games. It's a little different in film, because film is more closed off, and in film it's usually you're going to be contacted with. If you want to work for film, you have to wait for them to contact you in most cases, because there's so many talented artists or artists that paint really well that they most likely don't bother by replying. I used to send emails to production designers and whatnot. I never got any reply. I know there's some people that actually got a reply, but those were the guys who were really fucking good, like really fucking good. Okay. So usually production designers and directors and producers, they find someone online that they are really jazzed about, and then they'll contact that person. And that might not necessarily be the best artist, by the way. They have there's something weird about film that those guys in film, they look at different things. I cannot crack what that is. So, but in video games, almost every game company gonna have its own hiring protocol. And just go on the website and read what exactly do they expect from applicant, like how they're expecting you to send application, and do it exactly as they say. I'll tell you how many times I had Candace from HR, or I can't remember, maybe it was Candace or someone else, like people from HR coming over and just saying like, oh my God, those kids don't listen, because like companies like, let's say, Naughty Dog, for instance, right? They get like dozens of applications every fucking day, right? So in order for any of those applications to be funneled down to art directors, they have to follow a protocol. Like they have a protocol of how you apply specifically for their own pipeline, to make sure that the process of filtering good artists versus bad artists, and those who are considered for hiring, is as easy as possible. Someone who works for HR, they're not only looking through emails from artists, they're also looking through emails from programmers and designers and animators and sound guys and fucking voice actors and writers, and it's just, the list goes on and on. And they also take care about HR business, which is, making sure that there are no disputes in the company. There's just so much work that is related, that is not related to hiring specifically, that the process of looking through portfolios, if it's not fitting the pipeline, they don't give a fuck. They have 50 other applications coming tomorrow. Why do they care about you?
A lot of video game companies have their own house look too. Like what's appropriate for, if you're an applicant for Blizzard, you don't want to have a game loft look or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you have to just follow a protocol. Like literally follow what they say on the site. And if your art is going to be good enough, then good. And go to conventions where you have art directors, because that's where they spot you as well. Like art directors have big say on who's getting hired. That's how Eitan was hired, by just being discovered by Rob Ruppel at Naughty Dog. Rob saw Eitan's work and played like, hey, we want to work for Naughty Dog. That's how it happened for him. So, and he said that on the podcast before. So, but yeah, follow the protocol. Direct contact is fine, but I can guarantee you're gonna have more luck if you just follow the protocol, especially for bigger companies. Let's see, there's quite a bunch of questions. I want to make sure that I'm getting a cool ones. Oh, this is interesting. How do you guys are managing to get visibility and first commissions, freelance jobs, or getting hired by studios? I think the answer to this is very, very, very simple. Make sure your work doesn't suck.
There you go.
Boom. It's all about your work. Honestly, it's really all about your work. And if it stands out, if it's good, and how good it is. Like I think you have to be really honest with yourself by looking at your body of your work, and then go and compare it to the best people that are in the market. Because I'll tell you this, and I know it from experience, that even small companies that they know they cannot afford someone big, they'll reach out to someone big just because maybe they get lucky, and they'll reach out to those guys first. So the guys who are on top, like the creme la creme of artists that you see, like the best work out there, those guys are getting shitload of mails and offers, versus someone who's good but not great. The difference is big in my opinion. Like if you're just good enough, you still might get offers. You might be on the fence of getting offers versus actually applying to places, whereas the best guys will always get offers. And yeah, it's I think your work really matters. Like it really is the only thing that matters. To be a successful artist, you have to do two things right: your work and not being an asshole. And that's it. Like if you don't do those two things, you'll be fine. It sounds very easy. I know it's hard. Believe me, it's sometimes easier to be a good artist than not be an asshole. That's sometimes a case. So, because I've seen a great artist being absolute fucking douchebags, and I was a douchebag myself for a while, and I've realized that by I remember it. I remember it like it was tomorrow, like it was yesterday, when I was still working as the art director over at Krydek, and I was asking someone, I can't remember, I was asking one of the artists about something, and the fucking eyes, the look, like, fucking what again? That look like, what the fuck you want from me? I was like, oh, okay. I was so, like, back then I was pissed, but in the hindsight, I was like, fuck, yeah, I was a douchebag. So yeah, you learn with time, but yeah, don't be a douchebag, basically, and be a great artist, and you'll be fine. Sounds easy, I know. Let me get maybe one more question, and we'll wrap it up. I know I cannot answer all of you guys, but I really have to wrap this thing and get back to work because my priorities are waiting. Let's see. I'm trying to get like a cool question. There's a question whether I'm only freelancing at the moment. Yes, I'm only working from home as of today. Do you have... Okay. That's a cool one. That's actually relatable. Do you have any advice for preparing for recruitment sessions at events like THU, and how do you stand out when they review like 200 portfolios a day? All right, so basically, apart, let's just assume your work is good, because if it's not, you're no matter how hard you're gonna try, you're not gonna stand out from those 200 a day. But I think the way I look at it is this: there's certain layers. So one is what kind of studio you're trying to apply to, and if you're presenting the right work that they're going to be expecting, right? So I've been giving a Blizzard example many times, and I think it's a good example because how specific work that they do, right? So if you apply to Blizzard, you kind of want to make sure that your style of work fits to what they've already done. And, there's always games that those game studios are working on in the back burner or behind the closed doors that you don't even know what they are. But you can safely assume that they might be working on DLCs and expansion packs, especially for like companies like Blizzard. That they're gonna fucking do World of Warcraft for like another 20 years probably. So, or maybe but there's a specific style of art that they produce. Like when you see a Blizzard game, you can see, okay, this is a Blizzard game, right? You can really see that. When you see a Naughty Dog's game, you can tell it's a Naughty Dog's game. There's certain trait about how it looks and what is the storytelling. There's certain layers that you can recognize that are studio related, right? So, or for instance, Infinity Ward or any of those companies that do Call of Duty, like if you're gonna go with your animation portfolio to Infinity Ward, you're not gonna get hired. They're not even gonna look at you. So, if you go with like ultra realistic paintings with and some Game of Thrones characters, I don't know, like if you go with that to Blizzard, you might be considered for cinematics, maybe. I don't know. Like it would be hard to tell, right? But yeah, just make sure that the work that you present for a studio is studio appropriate. I would say pick your best work. It's better to show 10 really good artworks than 50 average ones, because they're only gonna look at the good ones. And if it doesn't work out, try again next time. Just see what you could. I would say, if you can afford it, ask what they think you could improve upon if you would want to apply, let's say, in 6 months. Because it's never. They always, like, studios always will hire. Artists come in, do the work. Sometimes they move on to different jobs. So there's always like a revolving door. In some companies, it's more of a revolving door. In other companies, they only hire once in a couple of years. But artists come and go, and studios usually always look for new people. So I think it's not a bad idea to ask this kind of question where in Europe, because usually it's going to be art director or someone, right, that is reviewing it, someone who actually knows art. I hope so, at least. Asking a question, what do you think I could improve? Then maybe that answer will influence what you should be focusing on. And also be professional about it, Don't be fake professional where you're trying to impress someone at all costs. Be yourself, but be professional and prepared, And I don't know what that means exactly. Because I was lucky enough that apart from applying online via email to like Crytek and those companies that hired me eventually, after that I never had to apply anywhere, because I was lucky enough to get work coming to me. So I've been out of hiring process for a long while, but from the experiences of people I talk with and some of the HR people I talk with, just being professional and prepared, like having your work ready, like whether it's on if you're coming in with your laptop or something and you're presenting your work that way, then making sure it's like really well presented, like you're ready with the work open, you're not searching for folders as they're waiting for you, that kind of stuff. It's just so many small things that it's really hard for me to narrow down, but yeah, I hope it's helpful answer this one. Because again, like I haven't been in the hiring process for a while, but I can tell, like, asking this kind of question where if it fails, like, what can I do to improve, and then having your work prepared. Don't let I guess if you have tablet, it's better, right? Showing on tablet than showing on the laptop, but yeah, just have your work ready. Be prepared to answer any questions. Don't shy away from questions unless they're inappropriate, which I really doubt would happen. Try to answer them professionally, and try to answer questions honestly as well. Like, don't try to bullshit your way in, because bullshit can be smelled out really fast. Like that's something that I think artists do really well, especially when they're hiring, because they're picky. So okay, cool. All right, guys, let's wrap it up here. Thanks for everyone who joined us today live, and obviously for you guys here on Skype, the good old Learn Squared following crew. Some of the familiar faces, obviously, and some of you guys are actually on every stream, which is kind of crazy. All good though. All right, guys, thanks, and I'll see you next week, Thursday. If anything changes, I'll obviously let you know. But yeah, good stuff. All right, guys, take care. Till next time.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thanks for
Bye.
having me. See you guys.
Thanks again.